Today we're going to discuss responsibility. As you grow up, there will be new responsibilities as you become an adult. So we're going to discuss what these responsibilities might have. Things like having a car, living expenses, marriage, and children. So what is a responsibility? It's the opportunity or ability to act independently and make decisions without authorization from someone else. As you get older, you are going to take on more responsibilities where you just, take that initiative, take that responsibility without the approval of parents or other adults, without being instructed that you need to, do something. And usually when you take on these responsibilities, hopefully they're gradual, and it's not because all of a sudden, you have no choice but to take the responsibilities on, but hopefully you have a social structure that's supportive of you. But, usually adults will gradually give you more responsibility as they see that you have what it takes to act in a way that will be acceptable to them. Sometimes, however, in some family situations, teens will be required to take on more responsibilities. But such responsibilities frequently, for the average teenager, would include things like housework, cooking, maybe caring for younger siblings, things like this. Sooner or later, though, you will have your first job, and there are responsibilities that go along with having a job. And I think that sometimes, maybe you've had a good role model as far as having jobs, and maybe you haven't. But some of the most important things sometimes teenagers don't seem to understand. One of the most important things about having a job is to just be there. First and foremost, to show up when you're supposed to be there and be ready to work at that time, and then plan to be there for the entire length of time that you're supposed to be there. Some teenagers struggle with this. Something else comes up, maybe they just don't show up without even notifying their boss that they won't be there. This is not a responsible way to have a job, and ultimately, if you don't show that type of responsibility, then you will probably lose that job. But if you're responsible, you show up, you do the things that are required of you at work, and the boss learns that you are responsible, then they will probably give you additional duties, opportunities maybe to make more money, and things like this. So, like I said, it starts with just being there at scheduled time and ready to do your job. And then, always, if you have the time, in addition, look for other ways that you can help without being asked. What things can you take on? Another thing that's really important with a job is communication. There will be times that you can't make work, or you need to, or would like to reschedule and work maybe a different shift or something like that. Communicate with coworkers, with your boss, so that they know what's going on, and hopefully, are understanding and can work things out so that it doesn't interfere with you continuing to have your job. Another responsibility that may come along is having a car. Some people will save the majority of the money for that before. Usually you have to have at least some money prior to purchasing a car to make a down payment. So you need that show that responsibility of saving money that you earned, and so that you have that money for a down payment. Then if you have payments on your car, you need to be responsible about making that payment on a regular basis, making sure you have the money to make that payment, that you're not spending money on other things, more frivolous things, and not making your payments. You also need to realize that there are other expenses that go along with owning a car. There will be registration and taxes that are due to the state, insurance costs. So these things vary depending upon what car you own, but all cars will have some expenses along those lines. And then maintenance. Unfortunately, cars don't run forever, and different things will come up. There's routine maintenance, and then there are the expenses that come along when something goes wrong. So we need to have a way to be prepared to pay for those expenses also. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, is just the responsibility of being a responsible driver, making sure that we understand the laws, that we drive safely, that we drive defensively, and that we make sure that we're safely belted in our car and all of the people in our car wear seat belts. One thing that may be interesting, or maybe you've seen this yourself, is that the generation, my parents' generation, I would say, they didn't wear seatbelts as much. Cars, we didn't even have seatbelts in the back seat, and the ones in the front were just lap belts, and they really weren't that effective. And so my parents grew up in cars that didn't even have seatbelts, or may not have had seatbelts. And so that generation is not as what I would say religious about always making sure they have their seatbelts on. And so as our parents got older and we would drive them around town, reminding them to always put their seatbelt on was something that we had to do, just like reminding our children to make sure that they wore their seatbelt. So this is something that has changed with time. But being a responsible driver is a very important thing. Other responsibilities, sooner or later, you'll go out on your own, but some of these living expenses you may be responsible for before you're fully on your own. Things like paying for rent or a mortgage, paying for utilities, having enough money for food, car, or maybe you live someplace where you get around by public transportation. Phones have kind of changed over the years, going from being more of a utility to our cell phones, and that can be a significant expense. TV, internet, those type of expenses tend to be things that, somewhere along the line we decide, okay, this is a priority and a must-have. Obviously, we need a place to live and we need food and clothing, things like that. But at some point, they become luxuries because maybe we can't afford them. How much money we spend on our social life, going to movies and concerts and eating out and things like that. We also need to be responsible about saving. Saving for things like vacations, major purchases, things like that. And of course, there's always taxes that we're going to need to pay, so we need to be responsible about that. A lot of people choose to donate a certain amount of their money to a religious organization through tithing, or maybe to other organizations that they believe in what they're doing through donations. So we need to, ideally, if you can make a budget and make a plan, that will help you make sure that you're meeting your responsibilities. But we always want to make sure that that financially we're paying for those things that are necessities before we start spending on luxuries. Also, we're going to have social responsibilities. You may choose to become married in the future, and along with becoming married, there are responsibilities, financial responsibilities of whether you're actually earning money, but even if you're not the one earning money, you're both going to be spending money, and so deciding together how you will choose to spend your money. Emotional responsibilities, being caring, having a positive emotional situation in the household, and learning to work together and have mutual respect for each other. Learning to live with somebody new, no matter how much you love them, can be difficult, and so that can be a process. You want to work together and make sure that you're both in good health, caring for each other, making sure that you are exercising, eating right, looking out for any signs of diseases in one another. And then, of course, planning for the future. When you're young, you may have all kinds of dreams, and, you want to, try to make a plan so that you can reach those dreams together. And of course, then there are the responsibilities of children. This hopefully will be within a marriage or some kind of at least supportive situation with both parents. But unfortunately, frequently in our society, there are a lot of single parents, and you have a responsibility to those children. They're not able to take care of themselves. So one of the primary responsibilities is taking care of their health, making sure that they're getting vaccinations, that they're, if they're ill, they're getting cared for, this type of things. Obviously, financial responsibilities, that you have the money and you're providing all of their necessities. Emotional responsibilities, again, that you are providing a positive emotional environment and are helping build positive self-esteem in your children. There will be times with children that you will need to provide discipline, and particularly if you're married or with the other parent, you need to decide on how you want to approach that discipline and be consistent with that. And again, planning for their future, making sure that throughout their childhood you have the things that they need, and then also planning for positive, fun things that you can do together as a family, and then for their education as they get older, and so that they're prepared to become adults. So those are various responsibilities that you may, most of them you will face, but you may not face all of them, and some things to think about as you grow into adulthood. Thank you.